Hey there, folks. The number one Bring Me the Horizon fan from the Infinite Jukebox here with another quick album review. And today I wanted to talk about the new Bring Me the Horizon record, Post-Human, NeX GEn. Bring Me the Horizon have kind of cultivated some interesting history, some interesting lore for themselves over time, as they've gone from a pretty equally beloved and despised, yet ultimately not particularly memorable metalcore band, to a still extremely polarizing but significantly more experimental and even outright influential fusion of various influences that has ultimately allowed them to kind of outclass a lot of their mid to late 2000s peers in terms of changing with the times in a way that, despite the fact I'm still not a huge fan of most of their recent material, I would still personally consider to be a great deal towards their benefit in terms of uniqueness alone. The band's latest studio album, Post-Human, NeX GEn, does demonstrate a lot of the qualities that make Bring Me the Horizon such a unique band at this point in their career, but I kind of feel like it fails to stick the landing in terms of making an actually cohesive record that works for me. First things first, Ollie Sykes is an extremely talented vocalist, a very competent frontman. That being said, his choice to go with some extremely clean vocal styles for the majority of vocal passages that he performs throughout this record is something that I feel just does not work, despite the fact that it does objectively suit the overall clean and polished instrumental style of this record, but I still just can't help but feel that something about the polished quality of his vocal performances here are just kind of lacking. Admittedly, some of Sykes' more clean vocal performances actually do work here and there, mainly on the very soaring choruses of tracks like the beautifully named Top 10 Statues That Cried Blood, but that doesn't prevent him from feeling just a little too restrained throughout the vast majority of this record, which is kind of disappointing to hear considering, again, like I said, he is a more than capable frontman who has delivered some great work in the past, even on the band's weaker efforts, and it's a shame to not really hear him shine that much here. It certainly doesn't help that as the primary songwriter of the band, he doesn't deliver a ton of great material here, despite the fact that the record is thematically very vulnerable throughout the majority of its runtime, and I even feel slightly uncomfortable in bringing up the poor quality of the lyrics here considering some of the topics handled, but at the same time, lines like "My ego is not my amigo" from Lost, or "I've died 1,000 times, but I'd still kill myself for you" from Die For You, fit this certain brand of melodrama meets personal struggle that Bring Me the Horizon have always kind of dealt with over the years, but that doesn't make it feel less clunky in the context of their respective tracks, or less overall ineffective in conveying any sort of real, genuine, powerful, emotional distress. That being said, the record is at the very least somewhat interesting instrumentally, albeit extremely imperfect. Some of the more industrial influences on tracks like Kool-Aid are kind of nice to hear, I suppose, and some of the more general electronic influences on cuts like RIP, duskCOre remix, kind of lean into the hyperpop side of things in a way that I actually think is extremely interesting, and in a way that I kind of wish they embraced even more here, but that's kind of the issue, because beyond the fleeting track or two that feel extremely interesting in the direction that they're going, the creative avenue they're going down, for the most part this record feels like the more electronic influenced emo pop metal fusion that Bring Me the Horizon have been doing for a little while now at this point. And while I'm not necessarily asking for them to change their sound with every single record or anything like that, it does feel ultimately like this is a bit of a predictable sound and direction for them to go in, and not a especially great example of that sound in action at that. Look, Bring Me the Horizon are a genuinely exciting band to me, even if I'm not their biggest fan, because they have this willingness to experiment that most bands that have been around for as long as they have completely lost at this point. Whereas, very uniquely, I think that they've just started to really pick up that experimentation within fairly recent years overall. I just think it's a shame that the potential found in their experiments doesn't necessarily translate over to the quality of their output, as I don't think they've ever really put out a record that totally represents just how much they can be in terms of experimentation and in terms of complete and total willingness to design a sound that is massively independent from where they started and the kind of vibe and aesthetic that they are generally associated with historically. And plus, a record that has Lil Uzi Vert and Glassjaw's Daryl Palumbo on the same song should be one of the most mind-blowing, baffling things I've heard in my life. Fuck this year. My entire life. This should completely expand my mind to the cosmos in a way I would have never expected because of that combination, which should not exist and is cursed in the best way. But ultimately, Post-Human NeX GEn, it just mostly comes across as a highly unique, but at the same time extremely over-polished record that doesn't quite lean into its most thrilling moments enough to feel particularly successful as an experiment, and it feels too ambitious to feel any sort of success as a meat and potatoes album of any kind, and ultimately that leaves it in this weird gray area that makes it sort of feel like nothing much at all. I'm going to give this record 2.5 stars out of 5. And with that being said, that is the end of this quick album review. Thank you for watching the Infinite Jukebox, and I'll see you in the next one.